everybody. Thank you for coming to our storytelling night, hosted with Samara Anderson. My name is Devin, and I'm a librarian here at Kimball. If you need water or bathrooms at any point in time, bathrooms are just around the corner, and water is through both sets of doorways, so help yourselves. And then we have 2 events coming up that I wanted to share a little bit of information with you about. Next week on Tuesday, May 5th at 6:30 p.m. we have a presentation on self-publishing from Ann Akins, who's here telling a story tonight. Ann Akins, the author of a book, A Young Woman's Guide to Life, a cautionary tale, and the Upper Valley Girl column in local newspapers for over 30 years, will offer her experience on self-publishing. There are going to be no handouts or slides, so please bring a pen and paper if you want to take notes during this rapid-fire delivery of non-nonsense advice. Later this month, on Saturday, May 23rd at 1:30, we're hosting the author Tim Weed, who his last book, The Afterlife Project, was just one of our adult book club picks, and he has a new book upcoming, The Gatepost, that he's going to be talking about on that event. You can find out more about our events on our website or the newsletter. Again, thank you for coming to Kimball, and I hope you enjoy the stories.
All right. So first order of business, let's all grab these little devices here. Raise your hand if you think you're going to have an emergency in the next 2 hours. Because some people have premonitions. Okay, if you don't think you're going to have an emergency, please take your phone and put it in airplane mode. So don't just suppress notifications. It could still buzz, beep, it could still distract you. The last event, one of the last events I did, the timers, phone went off twice. I'm like, Ashley, you're my friend. So please don't be that person. It can throw a storyteller off if they hear that sound. All right, so my name is Samara Anderson. I am an attorney with the Department of Children and Families. That's what I do for my day job. But I also am a yoga teacher, and I'm a mindfulness instructor. So I'm actually going to guide us at some point. If we all feel somewhat stressed, I can guide us in a very quick relaxation event. It takes 2 breaths. It'll help. So why are we here? We're here because I wanted to host storytelling events. And why are we in library? Because I love books. When I was a kid, I grew up on a farm, didn't have a lot of money, we couldn't buy books. So libraries were how I got portals into amazing worlds. And we're going to hear all of these stories here. So yeah. Libraries, they're portals to adventure. And I also believe libraries are community organizing locations. This is where the community comes together. And I started my first event in 2024 in Moncton, a town I had just moved to. I didn't really know anybody. I hosted the event. It was amazing. And immediately I said, I'm going to do this at every library in Vermont.
Ah, yes.
And then I went home and I Googled how many libraries are in Vermont. Do you know how many libraries there are in Vermont? 187.
Oh.
So I'm going to be doing this for 18 years. So you're welcome to become groupies. You can follow around. There are handouts out there. I'm booked through the end of this year, and then I'm booked for one library, Judavine. I don't even know where that library is, but it's in June or July of next year. So please come to more events, support events. If you want to stay in touch about events, I have a mailing list that's gotten so large now I can't send it through my Yahoo anymore. So I'm going to have to get like a MailChimp or something. Like I've just, it's a good problem to have. This has gotten too big. All right, so I'm going to quickly go through the storyteller rules for those of you that aren't storytellers and want to understand what the storytellers are going to be doing tonight. You're going to hear a little bit about that. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about timing, and then we're going to roll. All right, so storyteller rules. These are all first person, so it happened to the storyteller. These are true with some elaboration. So you can elaborate, you can exaggerate, but it should be mostly true. It should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So not just a stream of consciousness. And I do allow people to use notes. So if you see someone with an outline,
I thought you said absolutely no.
I said no notes, but you could request an accommodation.
Oh.
I know it's in there more than once. So yeah,
Fine print, you lawyers.
it's true. Read the email again, read the guidelines.
It's all right.
So yeah, I do allow notes now, because I don't want there to be any barriers for storytellers. So you guys clearly, you're gonna be fine. You're gonna be fine. 5-minute minimums, 7.5 to 8-minute max. So you do have up until, because there's only 8 storytellers, not 10, so I'm gonna give everyone, out of the kindness of my heart, 30 more seconds. Now, I'm gonna talk a little bit about timing, but you do wanna stay within the parameters. You don't wanna go tell a 10-minute story. Please do not include any racism, misogyny, homophobia, or any form of hate speech. If that happens, I will come and move you from the location, from this location. Not forcibly,
Has
just,
that ever happened?
no. But someone did say that their story was about hate speech. And I said, but you were being bullied, so
Right.
that's different than you
I'm just
bullying
curious.
people with their words. It's never happened.
That's good.
But it is in the guidelines, Peter.
I-
So you can refer back to the
All
email.
right, well, I have no intention
Okay,
of
good.
breaking
I just like
guidelines.
All right, you guys are asking some tough questions tonight. All right, so this story is being recorded. Oh, geez, I forgot to turn mine on. It is being recorded. Wayne is recording for Orca Public Television.
Oh, no pressure.
So you are going to be on camera, and he has a mic here. I am recording for just a local public radio station, WVVT. Covers 5 towns in the local area where I live, so it's not really going out further. All right, so let's get to timing. So for storytellers, the timer is over here. Her name is Eva. All right, so when you start your story, the first words out of your mouth, she is going to start her timer, and she's going to hold up a green flag. So green means go. You're rolling, all right? So from 0 to 5, when you look over and you see the green flag, you're in that range. You're in the 0 to 5 range, okay? At 5 minutes, you're going to get the checkered flag. You're a winner. Like, you can end your story now. So, you know, there's this structure, and the reason why it's 5 minutes is because if you ever want to go and tell a story at the mall, their stories are 5 minutes, minimum and maximum. It's just like, I think you get up to 5:30, but then they drag you off the stage. At 7 minutes, you're going to get the red flag, okay? So that means you have 30 seconds to a minute to wrap up your story. So if Eva is listening to your story and it doesn't sound like it's going to end, it's 7:30, it's 7:45, the person's still going, you're going to get the, bell.
A little bit quieter?
You can, yeah, some people, if you hold it, you could hold it and do this, or just do a gentle, you don't have to really get crazy with it, unless they're really not stopping. Because we want to stick to those guidelines, even with 8 storytellers, I want to get us all out of here by 8:15, so let's please stick to the time. All right, after you've told your story, now I tell these same rules every single time, and people always rush off because they're so excited their story is over and it went awesome and they loved it. They just run away. Do not do that, okay? You're going to walk over here, and I will point to you, or you're going to walk over here, and I'm going to pick the first storyteller right now. Now, storytellers, when your name is chosen out of the hat, do not jump up and run up here. This isn't The Price is Right. You're going to stay. Does anyone remember what that show was? Okay, I felt like I just dated myself. People are like, what is that? Okay, good. Right? You're like, okay. I didn't watch it. They told me about it. I never watched it myself. Okay, so your name is called. You're going to stay seated. You're going to start doing some deep breathing. You're preparing to tell your story. There's going to be time. All right, so don't jump up. Storytellers, there's always one storyteller that jumps up. Don't jump up. You're not going right away. All right, so this is the first storyteller. Don't jump up. And also, try and be excited. Like I did this once, and someone, I said their name, and they go, shit. Don't do that. Be happy. You get to go first. Ann Akins. Where's Ann? Oh, so Ann gets to go first. She's number 1. All right. so let's just pretend we're bringing Anne up to the stage. So we're just going to pretend thunderous applause. So there's not a lot of people here, but we want to sound like there's a lot of people, because remember, we're recording this for the radio. Okay, here we go. So welcome to the stage, Anne Akins. After you've told your story, you've picked the name out of the hat, still don't run away, now you're going to talk about your book. So all of the storytellers have picked a favorite book. Now, this group was the first group out of, and this is the 18th event that I've hosted, where there was a lot of vexation around the selection. I don't want to pick a favorite. How can I pick a favorite? Just pick something. Just pick a book that you like. It doesn't have to be your favorite. So this, yeah. And that's a good problem to have. Like, you love so many books, you can't pick your favorite. I need to change. I might have to change the verbiage a bit. Okay, so this is my book, Heartwood. Has anyone already read it? Oh. So I chose this book to read because I backpacked the Long Trail with my dog and 2 other friends with their 2 dogs. So we were called the Sister Wives, and we had the Sister Dogs. That was our trail name. This book is about a woman who went backpacking on the Appalachian Trail, which I'm sure most of you have heard of, and she's up in the 100-mile wilderness, so she's very close to Katahdin, and she disappears. And the search is on. Now, what's really cool about the way this book is written is it's all of these separate stories. And you're kind of like, what is happening here? Like, why am I hearing about Lena? And why am I hearing about this? All of these separate stories that seem completely disconnected all of a sudden start to collide. And you're like, oh, and then you can't put it down. And it's 9 o'clock at night. You're like, ah. It's a great book. It's a great read. If you like that kind of like, I don't know what's going to happen next and I want to solve this, it's a page turner.
Is it fiction?
It's fiction. I would call it historical fiction because it's actually a lot, like the location and a lot of the, everything about the search and rescue, that's all accurate. And kind of what tangentially happened to her is accurate. And it's based on a true story about a woman who did not survive. So there's actually, a lot of it was taken from that. And you can, so one of the things I will say about when people start talking about their book, if you have a question about the book, you can ask them the question about the book. That's not heckling or like trying to interface with the storyteller, right? You can ask questions about the book.
I have a little question.
Yes.
How long do we have to talk about the book?
As long as I just had. So I would say 1 minute, 2, 3. Sometimes people say, I want to read this one passage, as long as it's short. You don't want to read multiple pages. But yeah, just enough to hook people's attention. So after hearing about this book, who thinks they might want to read it now? Yeah? All right, see? So I work on commission. No, I'm kidding. So you talk a little about your book. The other aspect of this event is all of you as audience members come into the event through those short stories. So many of you have already kind of written out your little short story, put in the basket. This is a time in between the storytellers where I will be reading little short stories. And I'm trying to find a really short one. Give you an example. Here we go. All right. So everyone has the opportunity to tell a little short story. They can put their name. They can be anonymous. This is Mark Kelly.
Oh, jeez.
Mark. All right, so we all know where Mark is. Mark is right there. So Mark.
Supposed to be excited.
I know.
Let's
Supposed to say
turn that frown upside down.
Yay.
Come on, Mark. If money and time were no object, where is the place on earth you want to visit and why? Tasmania. Not just to meet the devil, but because of all the strange flora and fauna, demonstrating the inventiveness and fecundity of life on Earth.
Yeah.
Oh.
Nice.
Yeah. So thank you. And also, I love the use of fecundity. So
Who don't
I
love that?
know that's a highlight for me so far. All right, so we've got 8 total storytellers. 4 of you are gonna go, then we're gonna have 10 to 15 minutes. There's Cabot cheese, there's maple sandwich cookies, there's apple cider, through the doors into the, what is that section?
The children's room.
The children's room. So we're all gonna go into the children's room and you can grab a snack. We will ring the bell to bring you back, so don't stray too far. Audience guidelines. So those are all the storyteller guidelines. These are the audience guidelines. So remember, I'm a lawyer, and so there's some rules. Please share your super short stories and drop them in the basket. Be active listeners. Give active feedback. If it's funny, laugh. If it's emotional, stay present. Not every story is funny. Some stories are very emotional, sad, angry. Just be present with the audience or with the storyteller, but don't be conversational. So if they're telling a story about a car and you yell out, well, what kind of car was it? No, you're not. But if they ask you a question, and there's a question I always want to know, how many of you were raised on a farm? Raise your hand if you were raised on a farm. All right. So these are the 3, if things go astray, we're the 3 that are gonna be making fire, we're gonna be like, we're gonna be collecting wood, we're gonna be hauling water, like we'll be doing all the things, right? Farm kids. Now Devin, the librarian, is going to be selecting her top 3 storytellers. You will be invited to participate in an invitation event in December, on December 10th at the South Burlington Library. They have a big auditorium, fits 150 people. It's a beautiful event. I've now hosted it 2 years in a row. Peter attended last year. What did you think, Peter?
It's good, it was
Yeah,
great.
a lot of fun.
It's nice.
So that's something that is a part of this event. So as storytellers, you could be invited to that. And please don't violate these rules. They will ensure we all have an enjoyable storytelling event. All right, so without further ado, we will now bring up our first storyteller, and we are not, this is for real, Ann Akins.
The night before my father died, I woke up with the inner urgency monster telling me I had to get down there right now. So I sped to Burlington International, where I waited for 9 hours because I couldn't get an earlier flight. At that time, my father is asking my sister, is Annie still coming at Christmas time? This was October. And my sister said, no, she's coming now. She's probably in the air. So I get down to Raleigh-Durham Airport and I get my rental car and it's getting dark and it's raining and I brought the wrong glasses and I can't see anything and I drive like a bat out of hell anyway to my father's facility about an hour and a half later. I arrived there with a lot of anxiety, and I see people walking towards the facility with sheet music. And I burst into tears because if I'd gotten there earlier, I could have seen my father's choir singing to him, his beloved choir. He was a tenor. So I get inside the facility and I see that it is in fact my father's choir. And I jump the line because of the inner urgency monster. And at the front, handing out name tags is Amy, his retired Army nurse, who is missing pieces from being in Iraq. And I say, I'm Ann. And she says, go here. And she slaps a name tag on me and says, room 312. And I run 312, 312, turn the corner, 312, 312, turn the corner, 312, 312. And I stop dead in my father's doorway because he's skeletal. And he's breathing like this. And I can't believe he was speaking earlier that day. So I rush over and I'm apologizing. Father, I'm so sorry, I tried to get here earlier. And Amy, the nurse, comes into the room and I say, he must be so thirsty. And she shows me how to put water in his mouth with a straw. And he goes, and I go, oh, he likes that. And she says, he's also in pain. He's waiting for his pain medication. The nurse is dispensing that. And so she leaves and the choir comes in and they see how bad off he is. And they just sing two songs, a verse each from two songs. One is Down to the River, and one is Amazing Grace, which I hate, but he loves. And the man is totally blind, and he can hardly hear. He's looking at the ceiling as if he can see, and he can definitely hear. And he is beaming, because he loves that his choir is sending him off. So they say goodbye, they kiss him goodbye, they touch him goodbye, and they leave. Amy leaves me alone with him, and I just begin apologizing and saying how I wanted to take him home. He just wanted to go home. I used to cook dinner, and he would play music very loudly because he couldn't hear very well, and he would listen to Fox News at 80 decibels. I know because there's an app for that. And he played it so loud, we would have to sing at the top of our lungs to even hear ourselves. And so I say, I wish we could go listen to Gordon Lightfoot and Eagles' Greatest Hits and Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And he's listening. He's listening to me. I'm certain that he can hear me and that he's aware. And then he stops breathing. And I run out into the hall and I say to the nurse, my father has been waiting for his pain medication. Now he's not breathing. And she runs with a stethoscope and she moves it around and she says, he's going. He's going. And then he was gone. And you could tell. So I call my sister and I say, he's gone. And she says, as people will, what? And I say, and the coroner's coming, and I don't want to stick around for that, but I don't want to leave him here alone in case he's still in the room. And she says, he's not there. He hated it there. He's back at the house. So I get in my rental car in the dark, in the rain, and the crying, and I go to his house and I turn on all of the lights inside and out, where he had lived alone so bravely for 6 years since my mother died, blind. And I go over to his music area and I turn on the stereo, and I think it's because it was always set so loudly, when you press the on button it would go really deafeningly loudly. And the CD that comes on is Eagles' Greatest Hits. And I sing at the top of my lungs and enjoy a really poor quality glass of bourbon, which he had on hand, and I sang the entire album. And the funeral was a whirlwind, and it came and went, as you probably all know. And my nieces came and stayed in the house with me. And after the funeral, we cleaned out my mother's and my father's belongings of a lifetime for 9 hours straight, 3 of us. And it's midnight and we're totally exhausted from the whole thing. So I'm going to the restroom and I say, which is called a bathroom in the house, okay? I say, the whole town smells like reefer. And my eldest niece goes, it's my dab pen. So I go, can I have a hit? And I'm immediately way too stoned. And I say, oh no, now I'm going to want to talk. And she said, okay. And I yelled to my other niece on the other couch, and I said, McGee, we're gonna talk in here. You wanna join us? And she says, yes! And she came in, and we talked a little bit, and then I say, let's play Grandpa's music. And I walked over and went, psht, and Eagles' Greatest Hits came on, and we danced and we sang to the entire album, and I know for a fact, just as when I went to his house by myself, that he was there, and he could hear us, and he could see us paying him tribute. Thank you.
All right, go ahead.
Oh, I pick.
You pick.
Pick up the way, but
Number 2 is
Mary Anderson.
Mary Anderson's on deck. And then grab your book.
My book, very briefly, autobiography, Life by Keith Richards. Very, very smart. Came from super low income background, unlike his friend Mick Jagger. Unabashedly honest. Very, 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 very funny. Filled with the incredible story of a lifetime, and I never read books this thick, and it was a page turner, and I hated when it ended.
Yeah. All right. Woo! All right, thank you. Thank you, Anne, for sharing that story. I know that's a hard story to tell. You guys are tired. How many of you have been at someone's passing? When someone passed? Yeah. It's one of those moments where, because it was interesting as Anne and I were talking about her story and we were emailing back and forth. She said, I'm going to tell a story about my father dying. And I said, oh, I've got a story about my father dying that I've never told, and I don't think I'm ready to tell it because I think I would just cry the whole time. So you did great. But she said, well, if you're going to tell your dad's story, I'm not going to tell my dad's story. I'm like, I'm not telling my dad's story. Because we already had at that point like 11 or 12 people signed up, so I knew I wasn't going to tell the story. But what's interesting about her story, and I don't know if any of you experienced this as you were listening, is there were a lot of similarities with my father's passing. The water, like they had dry mouths and all he wanted was water, and they said, they had a sponge, and I could put a sponge on his lips because his lips were also chapped. I don't know if you saw that with your father. Sometimes they're so dry and chapped. And then they said, he's going to choke on the water. You can't give him water. All he wanted was water. It was so hard. And so when they'd leave, I'd be like, giving him water, And the hearing, they can't hear. It's the last sense to go. So, just being there and speaking with them is, It's one of those moments of awe. Like when someone's born, that's awe, and when someone passes. So I think it's a very special moment. So, thank you for sharing that. All right, let us see. All right, Mark. Is there another Mark? Mark. All right, so Mark told a story. I believe his story was about, tell us about the first time you fell or felt in love. Yeah. So he answered correctly, I felt in love when I saw Haley Mills in The Parent Trap. Not sure how old I was, but felt grown up. Thank you for sharing. All right, so let's welcome our second storyteller to the stage. Let's all give a warm welcome to Mary Anderson. Yeah.
I grew up in a biological unit that I would not call a family. I was praying to die by the time I was 2, and when I was 5, I ran in front of a car. I think that says enough. The way I survived was by talking to trees and being out in nature. By the time I was 13, I was adventuring on my own. In the 1980s, I twice thru-hiked the Appalachian Trail, becoming the first woman to do it in winter. And I followed that up immediately with a thru hike on the Pacific Crest Trail when there were only 4 hikers on the trail that year thru hiking it. And I always wanted to do the Continental Divide Trail, but life got in the way. Then 5.5 years ago, I arrived home to my house and it looked like it had been robbed. Without telling me, the man I had married had walked out, taken everything he wanted, and left $7 in my bank account. I was horrified to discover how far back into childhood suicidality I was pulled. And one day, on the brink of jumping to my death, a voice inside me said, "Stop. You always said you would die with no regrets, and you have not yet hiked the Continental Divide Trail." And I knew that voice was right, so I stepped back from the brink, and in my 60s, alone, I began planning a solo hike of the Continental Divide Trail. And this is a story of one piece of that trail from a book I have coming out called Meeting Mary Badass, which is the trail name the kids gave me on the trail. So I'm in Colorado, almost to 12,000 feet of altitude. And I see that there are some clouds moving in up on the ridge that I still have a climb to get to. And I know I don't want to be above tree line in Colorado when the storms move in. And I'm trying to think what to do, but there's a pond where I am and nothing high, and I think that's the true summit, and I think I can get up there before the storm moves in, and I'm just going to go for it. I want to get away from this water. So I start running up the mountain, I'm at 12,000 feet. You're just sucking in air at that altitude. And finally, I reach where I was trying to get to. And I realize, oh crap, I am in so much trouble. Not only was it not really the top, but I could also see from that vantage how fast and how many clouds were moving in. In fact, the wind was already blowing sideways. There was rain starting. And I thought, okay, you just got to keep going. I threw down my pack and I put on a raincoat because I could feel that I was already getting chilled. And I put my pack back on and I see a bolt of lightning. And then I start counting 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3. Boom! Before I could even get to 4, 1,000 is the thunder. And the next thing I knew, my hair was standing on end. It was sticking straight out in front of me. And I'm thinking, this is not good. I'm the highest thing around. And the rain has now turned to sleet and hail and snow. And I'm thinking, oh great, thunder snow. I gotta get out of here. And I tried to go down off the ridge. But now the rocks, which are already loose, are covered in ice. And I go sliding down the mountain, fall on my butt, dig my feet in to hold myself from going any further. And I'm just thinking, what do I do? What do I do? And I'm already kind of still vulnerable from this breakup with the divorce, and I'm just a mess and starting to panic. And the next thing I know, there's a ptarmigan that lands by my feet. Now, a ptarmigan is like a little grouse almost, a little bird at the high altitude. And it stands at my feet and starts wobbling its head, and then it walks off to the left, and then it comes back towards my feet and looks at me and goes back, and it does that 4 times. And I'm thinking, what is going on? What, you want me to follow you? Okay. So I get up, and here I am in a lightning storm with my hair standing on end, following a bird around the mountain. So I follow the bird until we get to a snowfield. And I'm thinking, this was not a great idea. And the bird flies out to the middle of the snowfield. I realize if I start crossing that snowfield and fall there, I'm probably going to go 1,000 feet down unless I can stop myself with my poles. But the bird just sits there, wiggles, looks back at me, wiggles. I think, okay, okay. So I start cutting steps in, slowly walking across the snowfield, trying not to focus on the lightning and thunder all around and the smell of sulfur that's now in the air. And then the bird gets up and flies to the other end of the snowfield. So I just keep going, keep going, keep going. And eventually I get off the snow and breathe a sigh of relief. And the bird keeps going. So I keep going. And we go around a bend and up a little rise. And there's this huge rock tower. The first time in days that there was anything higher than I was. And I think, this is it. This is where I'm staying. So I take off my pack and I find a little niche underneath because it's still storming all around me. I find a little niche underneath where I can sort of wiggle in, and I turn to say thank you to the bird, and it looks at me, and then it flies off, and I realized in that moment that once again, just as it had when I was a child, nature had saved me.
Lucky number 3.
Amy Harkin.
Amy Harkin on deck.
So the book I chose is The Body Keeps the Score. It's called Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma, and it's by Bessel van der Kolk. And the reason I chose this book is multifaceted. When I first started my process of recovery from childhood abuse, post-traumatic stress really was barely being recognized, and they were still calling it false memory syndrome. Now, this is back in the days when autism was being blamed on cold refrigerator mothers. And this was one of the earlier books that really, in my mind, understood trauma and stopped pathologizing it. Like I always say that post-traumatic stress, I never say disorder on the other end or dissociative identity disorder, because actually those are both normal, healthy responses to a disordered environment. And I don't think that we should keep pathologizing the people who were victimized, but we should pathologize the environment. And so I feel that he really helped to open that process up. And he talks about how these memories of trauma are remembered in every part of our body and in so many ways. And he does it with a very non-judgmental, clear, understanding way. So if anybody wants to understand trauma, even either childhood trauma or trauma of being in a car accident or whatever, and how it gets stored in the body and ways that he talks about releasing it, I highly recommend this book.
When's your book coming out?
It should be, we just finished the cover. I'm self-publishing, so it should be within the next month, because I'm hoping to go on another hike. Even though I just had surgery yesterday from another, I don't know, do I have a minute to say? I was backpacking in October with heated insoles in my boot, and it exploded and melted my boot to my foot. So my foot is all skin grafted, and I'm now just finished the second of what will probably be 6 more surgeries to try to get the skin graft so I can move my foot and, you know, it won't be quite so painful. But I'm determined I'm still gonna hike this summer.
Yeah.
I've got 21,000 miles behind me and one more National Scenic Trail to go, so.
I feel like we all met Mary Badass. So thank you for sharing. Yeah, Triple Crown. There's only like 750 people in the world that have the Triple Crown.
Wow.
I know this because an ex of mine is on the CDT right now and struggling. Because it is the hardest, it's the most remote, it's the highest in elevation throughout, so you're more exposed. And there's not as many, it's not like the AT where you can go to a hostel and you can get your, what are they called, trail magic and all. No, there's no trail magic there. Yeah, but you get nature and you get isolation, and that's what I would like.
Yeah. Can I add one thing
Yes,
to that?
yes.
So, of course, when I did the AT in the 1980s, it was a little different because I was carrying 65 pounds and there were no trail angels. But hiking wise, we always think the trails in the east and in the west are harder because they're higher elevation, and we do have to get used to the elevation. But there are only 2 places in 3,200 miles on the Continental Divide where you gain over 1,000 feet in a mile.
Yeah.
If you can hike in Vermont or New Hampshire, you can hike anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, it's real. I mean, it's true, like you have to carry water for 40 miles out there and you're drinking cow piss, really.
Yeah,
But-
there's droughts, there's no water, yeah. So
But
there's different challenges.
It's a very different challenge. So yeah, they're all hard in their own way, and I just think the Appalachian Trail in many ways physically, plus you don't get the rain out there. It's different. You don't get like multi-day over and over and over where you know your feet turn to prunes and
Right. And that's what happens in Vermont. They call it Vermud because it is so muddy.
yeah.
It is just so muddy, all year long, no matter when you do it. And it's interesting, my housemate, he's been doing him and his wife have been doing the Camino. And he was supposed to be doing 3 weeks. He came back because he's got blisters on the bottoms of his feet because he had new insoles. And they just destroyed the bottoms of his feet, so he had to get off the trail early. So yeah, it's, I agree, nature heals, if you can get out into nature. Similar to what you said about hiking anywhere, if you can ski in Vermont and New England, you can ski anywhere. I think it's the same with hiking. Like we've got, like people came off the PCT, they wanted to do some, just stay in shape, come do the long trail. They're like, what the hell is this? This is harder than anything we've ever hiked. So just know, we've got some amazing hiking here. All right, so let's see what our audience story is here. Devin, our librarian, she's going to tell us a story about how she ended up living in Vermont. My partner and I decided to hike. I think there's a theme here. To hike our way to Vermont in the summer of 2017. We were living in North Carolina and hiked on the Appalachian Trail, starting in Springer Mountain, Georgia. In July, we took a week off for a wedding and to scope out housing near South Royalton, where my partner was slated to start law school in August. I was like, what year? I started a lot earlier. We ended in High Point, New Jersey at mile 1,342 when my partner fell ill from Lyme disease.
Oh, no.
And this is actually, I've been hearing, is like one of the biggest issues out there, that and norovirus. 2 weeks later, after most of the round of doxycycline was in his system, we capped our summer with a trip to Iceland. He started law school a week later, and we've lived in Vermont ever since. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Is he a lawyer?
No.
I ask that because a lot of times people go to law school and they don't actually practice law. What does he do?
He's working as a committee assistant at the legislature in Vermont.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice. I probably know people that he knows, and et cetera. Are you going to go back and finish the AT?
We're hoping to. We only have New Hampshire and Maine left. We've been slowly sectioning our way.
Well, those are are those the hardest? I'll let Badass Mary say. Those are the hardest, right?
Both up and down.
Yeah, the whites, and then,
Mahusik Notch.
and then Maine. It's just challenging. So yeah, fun.
But it's beautiful too. It's well worth it.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd read that book before you go to Maine. All right, I got one more short story. This is anonymous. Tell us about a family vacation that went sideways. How many of you have had a family vacation go sideways? See, if you had a family vacation and it was great and it was awesome, you'd have nothing to talk about. If it goes sideways, now you got a story. On the way to a family camping trip, now camping is also rife with potential problems. Our 7-year-old son was reading Calvin and Hobbes about a camping trip that was ruined by rain. The forecast was great, but lo and behold, minutes after we set up our tent, we heard thunder, see another theme, and it started pouring. It rained so hard the bottom of our tent was undulating with waves of water. We eventually abandoned and went to a hotel to dry out. All right, thank you, Anonymous, for sharing that. All right, so we've got our third storyteller to welcome to the stage, Amy Harkin.
So, if you've ever worn homemade clothes, you've probably had the experience of being jabbed when you least expected it. A tiny bayonet right into the middle of your belly, or maybe your neck. The sewing pins that were used by my mother and her mother are tiny, barely visible, and they inevitably left one or two in whatever garment they had made me. And those are the sewing pins that I use too, because I didn't know there was anything else until I met my friend Carrie Waller. Now Carrie and I in graduate school, we collaborated on a sewing project, and when we started, I whipped out my red trusty pin cushion studded with all those little tiny pins with those little tiny nubby heads, you know what I'm talking about. And she pulls out this plastic box with something else entirely. These very long pins, twice as long, with these colossal plastic balls on the end. And I was offended. I mean, you know, what a desecration to the art of sewing, right? But they actually turned out to be better in a couple ways. One, your pin pushing finger doesn't lose feeling when you use those. And they're miraculously visible to the naked eye, which is always nice. So they're still pins, however. They're still very sharp and they're still apt to poke. In fact, they are more apt to poke because a proportionately smaller part of that pin is actually doing the job of holding fabric together, so you have this big long section, most notably the pointy end, hanging out with nothing to do and nowhere to go other than your skin. So in the space of a couple hours, you might get poked dozens of times. I come to call these pins my pokey pins. I have learned to truly value those pins, especially over the pandemic, and especially when they work. So, due to a series of very weird pandemic circumstances, my husband and I lived and worked in different states for about a year. And I lived by myself. And we talked every day. I talked with family during the pandemic, talked with work people, talked with friends. But most of my pandemic conversations were with myself. I talked to myself a lot, especially when I work with my hands. And during the pandemic, I sewed a lot. So I have forgotten where I'm going with this. Yeah, so during the pandemic, I sewed a lot, and without another human being to interrupt me, I could really get carried away with my thoughts. But my pokey pins had uncanny timing. They knew exactly when to interrupt me. For example, there I was on some particularly fiddly sewing task when I have to be precise, you know. And I can feel my brow furrow, I can feel my lips purse, my fingers are getting white at the tips because I'm putting so much pressure on the fabric. Bodily, I'm very intense, but in a growing part of my brain, I am considering what beer I'm going to drink when I get to my private pandemic happy hour and thinking, maybe I'll light a fire, right? Poke! It's like the pokey pin is admonishing me to be present. And if I cannot be where I am, if I cannot tend to the task at hand, I need to set it aside. Or there I am trying to pin a pocket on the front of a nightshirt. This is what I'm doing with my body, trying to be very precise and exact. But in my head, I'm being interviewed by Terry Gross. Or maybe Stephen Colbert, right? And I am brilliant, and I am hilarious, and I am revealing layer after layer of the absurdities of government and politics and religion and professional sports. And I'm on a roll, and I'm getting a little crass, and poop! Pokey Pin is saying, Amy, is that really what you would say to the whole world? Is that really how you would say it? Sure, your old bar buddy would think that was funny and would chuckle, but what would your brother think if he heard you say that? Or there I am trying to maneuver this half-done garment onto a hanger with my body, but in my mind, I'm having an argument with that other relative whose opinions are ill-conceived and terrible and stupid, and oh my gosh, I am giving him the most venom-filled, cold dressing down the world has ever heard. When poke, boy, Amy, your little rant shows off your vocabulary, your robust, profanity-laden vocabulary. But it's really kind of snarky, and it's filled with schadenfreude, and is that really who you are? And is that really who you want to be? There is tremendous value in being interrupted right in the middle of what you're doing, or in the middle of what you're thinking, or what you are believing. Now, I may never have unconditional love for my pokey pins, but I have come to respect them because they have taught me the value of interruption. That buckled sidewalk that trips you, or the cat that jumps in your lap and makes you spill your soup all over yourself, or that untimely coughing fit. These are all saying, wake up, pay attention. The cosmos has something to tell you. Thank you. Oh, do you want me to read it? Okay, our next reader is Peter Burns.
Peter Burns, on deck.
So this book, Raising Hair, was lent to me by my friend Terry, and it is a true story, another pandemic story about a woman who comes to raise a baby hare. She comes upon this newborn hare, a leveret, and it's clear that the mother is gone. And so she ends up taking it in. And it is the story of her relationship with this wild animal. And one of the things I really love about it is it explores that relationship that we have with creatures we can never fully understand. As much as we love them, as much as our heart tries to accommodate everything, we will never understand. And in the process, she brings in literature and history and art and all kinds of things. And it's just this marvelous story that has its basis in this tiny little life that she loved and saved.
So
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Amy. She had said right when she arrived that she was a little nervous, and so as I would say every storyteller is. Even when I host an event, I feel very confident, but when I'm telling a story, I'm very nervous because it's very vulnerable to share a part of yourself, sometimes with complete strangers. So thank you, and I actually gave her some mindful tools. There's a breath practice, it's called cyclic sighing, and there's a lot of science behind it. We can all do it right now. And if you are on deck to tell a story and you want to kind of find a place of calm, okay, so what we're going to do is we're all going to take a deep breath in. At the very top, take in a little bit more. Then you're going to exhale out your mouth. And you're going to do that again, deep breath in through the nose. As much as you can, a little bit more. Exhale out the mouth. That's it. That's all you do. Who feels slightly calmer? Peter?
Yeah, a little bit.
So there's a lot of science behind it. There's a podcast called the Huberman Lab. It's a neuroscientist. Has anyone ever heard of the Huberman Lab? He's a neuroscientist. I am obsessed with neuroscience. The Body Keeps the Score is a lot of neuroscience and how all that trauma is in our bodies. And his work is profound, and he's the one who kind of teaches that. But a lot of teachers teach it, so you just got a little tool to put in your little toolbox. When you were talking about sewing, so I grew up on a farm in Minnesota, and Mary Anderson was my grandmother. And when Mary Anderson signed up to tell stories, my heart just opened. I was like, oh, Mary Anderson, like I loved her. She was amazing. And she gave me, out of her little sewing kit, this tomato.
Yeah.
Right? It was the pin cushion that looked like a tomato. So is that what you're talking
Yes.
Yes.
about? I felt like that was the only option. I still do. So I'm a little confused by the long with the. But I also love how when we get into our thoughts and we think we're right, and especially when it comes to politics, and it can be, it's a very heated time in this world right now, and I'm sure many of us have family members that think differently than we do. And many times you approach it like, I just want them to change. Why can't they just think like I do? Why can't everyone just think like I do? Wouldn't that be easier? And then what I started doing, which I think is similar to you, I started listening to understand why. So if I just was in my mind, I could obviously come up with, of course that's the only plausible way to think about this scenario. But when you approach someone and say, I want to just listen to understand why you think that, sometimes you learn something. So I love that for me, I kind of use mindfulness as my pen, but sometimes the universe is like, you need to stop. You need to stop, right? We just get into our minds. So I love that story. Thank you. The Value of Interruption. That would be a good book. I would buy that book. All right, so let's see. Before our final storyteller goes, before intermission. This is anonymous. Ooh, I think this is one of my favorite ones. Tell us about a time you got in the most trouble with your parents. All right. The day I rented my first apartment, I was euphoric. I was 19 and ready to be off my parents' radar. Then reality hit. I had to tell my parents. I walked into the living room. My father looked up from his newspaper. But when he saw my face, he gave me the look. What'd you do? Do? How did he know? Somehow, I got I wish I could read this word. I got I'm not sure. I got the message, I'm not sure. He threw his newspaper down and he was upset. And not before telling me, you're ruining my life. So I'm sorry I butchered that, I couldn't read it, but yeah. All right, so thank you, Anonymous, for sharing that story. are going to bring to the stage our fourth storyteller. After that, he will pick another storyteller, and then we'll have an intermission. But let's all welcome to the stage Peter Burns.
There are three recurring motifs in this story, and you might enjoy looking for them as they come up. The first one is arcs. The second one is baseball, and I'm particularly grateful that you told me I was on deck. That was a great job. And also the number 3. My father was a brilliant man with an incredible depth of knowledge about music, literature, and art. He said, "Peter, I can't give you money, but by God, I can give you culture." And he did, for which I am eternally grateful. He wasn't an athletic man, but he knew that for me, a kid growing up in a working class neighborhood in Providence, Rhode Island, baseball was important. So he went outside of his comfort zone and he hit me high flies. We went to a deserted, an empty lot near my house a couple of times a week. Now the key to catching a high fly is judging the arc of the ball. You need to know where the ball's going to come down even when it's on the way up. It's a little bit like storytelling. I have to know where this story is going to end even though we're still right near the beginning. My father was a tale teller. One afternoon we were playing catch and we looked up and we saw high up in the sky a tiny little airplane. And it reminded my father of when he was a B-52 bomber navigator during the height of the Cold War. And he said, the mile-high Russian spy planes use baseball diamonds to scale their photographs because diamonds are always the same size, 60 feet to the pitcher's mound and 90 feet to first base. The summer I turned 15, I was in the program at the Moses Brown School on the east side of Providence. It was for kids who were theoretically smart but academic underachievers. I was amazed at how beautiful the campus was. It was just gorgeous, and I loved the deli sandwiches they gave us. And wait a minute, get this. For lunch, we had a choice of white milk or chocolate milk. For me, that was the definition of luxury. Chocolate milk. In the morning, we studied French and English and math, and in the afternoon, we played baseball. By that time, I was pretty good. One day, I was playing third base, which is sometimes called the hot corner, because balls come at you pretty fast when you're playing third base. Someone hit a rising line drive directly at me. Now, I'm sure you know that when you're catching a ball, for balls that are below the waist, your fingers go down, and for balls above the waist, your fingers go up. But this ball was rising so fast that I kind of caught it with the glove, but also my chest. I still remember the thump it made when it hit my chest. And it left behind an angry red splotch. It didn't go away, and so my mother took me to the family doctor, and he said, it's just, it's not serious, it's just broken blood capillaries on the surface of skin. It should go away pretty soon, but it didn't go away. And when I got a little older, hair grew only on this side of my chest, over that side. Now, earlier, it was last year, I went to see my dermatologist, and he did a thorough examination of all of my skin. And of course I told him about my baseball stigmata, And he said, no, it has nothing to do with baseball. It's a very rare type of birthmark that only appears when you're an adolescent. It doesn't appear into that. He said, it's just a coincidence that the baseball hit you in the same place as the birthmark was. And he said, do you mind if I take a photograph for my students? I said, sure. So he took a photograph, and I looked at the image that he had taken, and I was a little disappointed. I was hoping my chest would appear a little more muscular, but it did not. Now, I will be 70 years old this summer, 70, and I've been looking back over the long arc of my life, and I've been thinking about stories that I believed were true my whole life, but turned out not to be true. And I thought about the baseball diamond story, and some of you, of course, thought, well, wait a minute, Little League diamonds and softball diamonds are much smaller. And then I thought, maybe the Russians were way sneakier than we thought. Maybe they spread that rumor so that the Pentagon would build huge diamonds next to things they wanted to shrink, and tiny diamonds next to sites that they wanted to magnify. That would have ruined an entire generation of ball players. And since at the time in the Cold War, baseball was our national sport, we would have been demoralized and ripe for invasion. Luckily, we dodged that bullet, but now there are other dangers we need to face as a country, so let's be vigilant. Thank you. Dina.
Dina, nice. Our fifth storyteller.
So, as I said, my father gave me culture, and this is Swan's Way by Marcel Proust. Anyone read Marcel Proust? Anyone? All right, yes, all the way through?
Yeah.
All the way through. In French?
Yeah.
Yes, all right. 3 of us in the room have all done it. Yeah, we deserve a little award. But my father read it in French, so I felt like I needed to do that. So that was one of the reasons I learned French. Swan's Way is a beautiful book. It's in 7 volumes. It's about, in the translation, 3,300 pages long. So it's a commitment. Marcel Proust was known for, he's a very eccentric man. The last 10 years of his life, he lived in a cork room bedroom, and he stayed away all night writing, and he slept during the day. Fascinating man. But what I want to say is, this first volume, Swan's Way, and there's a great new translation by Lydia Davis that you might enjoy. Swan's Way, in my reading life, and I've read thousands of books, it's one of my passions, there's only been a few books that I've read that have been transcendent, almost hallucinatory. And the first volume evokes childhood in France in the late 19th century, but it evokes it in such a way that it feels like you're, I don't know, it's just something that has only happened a couple of times in my life. And so if you want something that's that amazing and beautiful, I suggest you try the first volume. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Peter.
You're welcome. I'm interested to what you have comments. I'm always interested in what you
I do have
will
comments.
say.
Yeah, I mean, I was following along. You said there's 3 motifs. It's arc, baseball, 3. So I was like, wait, where's 3? Where's 3? Oh, it's third base. Yeah.
Right, but there was more. The 3 things that my father, 1, 2, 3 things, and then also towards the end, the things we studied in school. So there's another 3, and 60 and 30 are multiples of 3. So it was there.
Yeah. No, okay. I'm glad you took me deep.
All right.
And I can't believe you're going to be 70. That's
Yeah.
impressive. Yeah, impressive. Yeah, and I think it's interesting. Sometimes you can live your whole life with your body, and sometimes it takes someone to look at your body a certain way, and you're like, I never even saw that, or I didn't see it that way. For example, I have this, I don't know what side of the face, I have this mole on my face, which for my whole life I never really noticed. And then I was dating this woman, and one of the first words she said was, "I'm so impressed that you just have that blemish on your face, and you've never had it removed." And I was like, "What blemish?" And then I went into the mirror, I'm like, "What? How is that there? Like, how did I guess, I don't know, I had a blind spot to it." And also, I don't really think it's a blemish. I don't think it's a negative. Like,
Yeah.
who had that little mole here?
Marilyn Monroe.
Marilyn Monroe, Cindy Crawford too, right? And people actually put them on artificially.
That's right.
So I thought, well, maybe it'll catch on. Maybe other people put this somewhere. Yeah, she turned out to be a bit of a narcissist. But anyways, I just thought it was interesting how she was pointing out flaws or things that, you know, she thought were, that I hadn't even seen and didn't see it as a flaw. And now I kind of look at it, I'm like, it makes me wonder. I'm not gonna go into a thought ribbon, but yeah, it makes me wonder about things that we thought were true that have later proved to not be true.
You need a pen.
I need a pen?
Oh,
I think, yeah, I maybe. Yeah, I'm open to suggestions. Yeah, I love that. I love the stories of what we've learned, not only from our parents, but what we've learned through life, and then other perspectives on us that we may not even be aware of. So, good lessons. All right, let us see. I've got a semi-long story and then a somewhat short story. BH. I feel like this is somewhat anonymous, but if someone wants to say who they are, BH, who's BH? Is there a BH in the room? Okay, maybe they want to be anonymous. What was your favorite celebration as a child? Is anyone sitting next to someone whose initials are BH? Then you want to just go like this? No? Okay, all right. My uncle's birthday is July 3rd. Here we go with the 3. My birthday's September 3rd. I love 3. That's why when you said 3, I was immediately with you, and then I noticed some of the threats. So my uncle's birthday is July 3rd. He builds highways for a living. His passion is his family farm. On July 3rd, all of my aunts, uncles, and cousins would go to the farm and start roasting a whole hog, 400 pounds. Oh, and on an adapted cement mixer. Okay. That makes sense, yeah. So you've got the fire in there, you've got the whole hog in the cement mixer. I feel like this one is taking a redneck accent, which I love because I was raised by rednecks and that's in my blood. On July 4th, half the country would show up to eat, half the county, sorry. It's a small country. Half the county would show up to eat and celebrate and fellowship, card games, sing-alongs, a feast. I love this. Thank you, BH. All right, so we are now going to take a brief intermission. It'll be about 10 minutes approximately. I will ring the bell. I will keep a timer. Bathrooms are right around the corner. There is cheese and cookies and cider. Please help yourselves. If you don't eat it, I have to take it home. And I love those items, but I don't want to eat that much. So please eat those items, and I'll see you guys in 10 minutes. I think when we are in a trauma bonding situation and we're under a lot of stress, we say things that we regret and do things that we regret. And I'm going to give you I'll be vulnerable right now and I'll share one of mine. So I, at the time, was an assistant attorney general. And I was representing DALE, the Department of Disabilities, Aging, and Independent Living. So we represented adults and children with disabilities and the elderly. And we had a lot of hearings. They were called fair hearings, so they weren't up to like the judicial system. They were at a level called the Human Service Board. So it was like, you know, a decision came in, let's say a child with a disability needed more services than what the state would provide. So we would have to, you know, have a hearing to talk about what the services would be. And I was really frustrated with some of the hearing service board decisions. So, now you can imagine, I'm in my office, I'm talking to another lawyer, and this was back in the day when we were all in the office. This was pre-pandemic days. And it's a long hallway, and the commissioner and the assistant commissioner and everyone their doors are open all down this hallway. And I just said out loud, this decision is so wrong. This hearing service board officer is, and I use the R word, retarded. So I say the word retarded. And it is like, all of a sudden when I said it, it was like completely silent down the hallway, and all of a sudden people's heads are coming out. The commissioner walks out of her office and comes down. Who said that? And I said, I'm so sorry. I said that, and I really meant she's slow. She's slow, she's giving a bad decision. It wasn't derogatory, I didn't mean it in that way. And she said, you know, we're gonna send you to a compassionate language workshop, and you're gonna learn about words that we don't use here. Yeah, that was harsh. So I've done it, I didn't mean it in a derogatory way, and yeah. So I'm with you on that. I can trauma bond with you. Has anyone else done something, said something that, if you're not raising your hand,
No, everybody.
yeah, write it down, put it in the basket. I want to read it. All right. Maybe it's in one of these stories. Okay. Terry. Oh, Terry. So Terry is going to tell us about how she ended up living in Vermont. In 1971, my boyfriend was needing to make up a physics course that he didn't do well in college. He decided to come to UVM for a summer from Maryland. He decided to come to UVM for a summer course from Maryland. We decided to come up and live together for the summer, which really upset my parents. How old were you at the time?
18, 19, yeah.
I'm not judging, just asking. We found a cheap apartment on Winooski Ave, which had an old, yeah, I know.
Back then.
Yeah, I was like, cheap? How cheap? And an old, how much was gas back then? No kidding. I had an old VW in the back for recycling. Our landlord quizzed us about being hippies, since that was the summer of the hippie invasion. The hippie invasion in Vermont, or just the hippie invasion
In Vermont,
in the United
big
States?
deal back then, yeah.
Why was it happening?
Everybody was doing back to the land stuff, and people were very nervous that all these
Scott and
hippies-
Helen Nearing,
Yeah.
like they really brought, there's a really good book about the hippie
hippies.
movement in Vermont.
We are Scots.
That's
Yeah.
the national one, but the other one was, I think, going up the country by Veranda Porsche, who
Going up the
lives down
Mm.
in Guilford.
All right, so we've got some book options we can read up on. I kind of feel like, I mean, this was before I was born, but I'm kind of into it. I wish I was a part of that movie. That summer, I worked the phones for Kirby vacuums. Yeah, I remember that. We had a Kirby vacuum. And Brent went to school. That summer, we traveled in our blue VW Bug all over Vermont, camping and hiking. That's when we decided that we would return in the future and put down roots, which we did. Aww. Thank you for sharing. I feel like, raise your hand if you came to Vermont to be closer to nature. All right, so I'm not sure what the other people are doing here, but we can talk about it later. All right. Yeah, exactly. The rest of you, this isn't for you. No, I'm kidding. All right, so we've got our sixth storyteller of the night. Let's give a warm welcome to John Kaplan.
I think most people, when they're about to go on vacation, are, pretty excited. They're thinking about, what activities they might do, the places they're going to go see, different things. And I don't normally think of myself as an anxious person. And we were looking forward to a vacation in March. My wife and I were decided to, leave the cold and gray March of Vermont and go find some warmth, and decided to go to St. John, which is down in the Caribbean. It's one of the U.S. Virgin Islands. Getting ready for that trip, we have a friend who has been to St. John a bunch of times, and he was very willing and eager to come over and share some of his tips on going to St. John. He and his wife honeymooned there, and then they've been back like another half dozen times. So he came over to our house and he had his map and he was showing us, they really like to snorkel. And so he was showing us all of the snorkeling spots that they like to go to. And very excited to share all this with us. And we've only been snorkeling, I had only been snorkeling like once before, and my wife maybe a couple of times. So that wasn't really our main focus of going. But anyway, he was sharing this information. It was all very well-intentioned. And at the end of when he was telling us about their snorkeling and just tips for going to the island, he mentioned a couple of things that just stuck in my head. One of them, he said, was just make sure, be really careful you don't step on any sea urchins. And because he said, the spines get in your foot and it's really hard to get them out, they can get infected. And then he was talking about another place that they like a little island off of the shore that they would snorkel. And he said, you gotta be kind of a strong swimmer to go out there. And then kind of almost in passing as he was leaving, we were talking about like renting a car or not. And he said, if you rent a car, you really are gonna want a Jeep. You're gonna want something with four-wheel drive because the roads are not the greatest. And he said, but you'll get used to them, I'm sure. So those things all kind of just lodged themselves in my brain, and I had probably several sleepless nights or sleep-deprived nights where I envisioned the sandy floor of the shore like covered in sea urchins and having to pick my way through, and do I need to go buy a pair of water shoes to bring with me, and also picturing myself getting pulled out with the current out into the ocean. I was already nervous about the driving because they drive on the left in St. John, and I've never driven on the left, and I knew my wife was not going to do any of the driving. She doesn't really like to drive in the first place. So I had some anxiety before we got down there. But anyway, we flew into St. Thomas, which is the bigger island, U.S. Virgin Island down there that has the airport. Took the ferry over to St. John. We went to the rental car place, and sure enough, it was a Jeep. That's pretty much all that you can rent down there. And kind of started my adventure of driving on the left-hand side. We went to a little grocery store to get some provisions to bring to the Airbnb with us. So far, so good. I really had to think about being on the left-hand side. It's really kind of a big mind shift after you've driven on the right your whole life. So anyway, that all was so far so good. Put the directions to the Airbnb in the phone and started following those. Came down this main road and then had to take a turn off, and that turn was onto probably the steepest road I've ever been on in my life. Started going up. The roads are kind of rough. They're narrow, there's no shoulder, there's big drop-offs. So we're kind of going up this road, it's really steep, and then there'd be these hairpin turns where you almost couldn't see the road that you were turning onto. You had to it was a little bit of a leap of faith at each one of these turns. And so we kept going. My wife was kind of white-knuckling it on the passenger side. And by the way, it's not like in, I think, some European countries where they switch the steering wheel. The steering wheel is just like our steering wheel. So you're on the outside of the road. It's extremely disorienting. So anyway, we make our way along the road, and I look down at the dash, and I see that the temperature gauge is kind of creeping up towards H. So I said something about it, and my wife Ann said, you know, well, let's keep an eye on it. So we kept going, like another half a mile. We get to the top of this crazy hill after a few more hairpin turns. I look down again, and now the needle is solidly pegged over to the H. And right at that point, when we got to the top of the hill, is when the first puff of steam came out from under the hood. And Ann said, we better back into that little side street. And luckily there was a side street right near the top of the hill. We back in, you know, I put the Jeep into park, and that's when the radiator exploded. We both like scrambled out of the front seat. We got all of our luggage and the groceries out of the back and moved like, I don't know, 10 yards away from the Jeep because, you know, we had no idea, like, is this thing gonna light on fire? So anyway, that was all within probably like a half an hour of our whole vacation in St. John. The ending of that part of the story was everything kind of turned out okay. The rental agency came and picked up the car with the blown radiator. We got a new Jeep, and I sort of got used to driving on the left. And then another day that was sort of like testing my patience of being on the island was we went to the beach. We had our one sort of beach day. We're not really big beach day people. And so anyway, I decided to body surf because there was a little bit of a surf, and had a great, you know, caught the wave just right and was having fun until I got slammed into a rock right at the shore on my knee. So I was really beginning to have my doubts about this, you know, relaxing vacation on St. John. We did end up going snorkeling. We had a good time. It was beautiful. The water was great. We saw all kinds of fish and sea turtles and stingrays, but St. John is not on our travel list to return. All right, Josie Carruthers.
Josie's on deck.
All right. Okay, Cloud Cuckoo Land. That's the book that I chose. And has anyone read it? Okay. Oh, good. So, you might remember more about it than I read it probably when it came out, 2021. I love reading fiction primarily, and I just really love this story. The first like maybe 20 or 30 pages are very disorienting, which sometimes can turn me off from a book, but I kind of hung in there, and thank goodness I did. And it's one of those stories where there's a lot of different storylines that all kind of are related and intertwined, and you know, once you kind of get a grasp of how they're connected, it's just so engaging. And then there's a real twist at the end that is a little bit of a mind blower. So anyway, highly recommend it.
Awesome, thank you, John. I do believe that when things go sideways, that's what makes it interesting, right? If that radiator hadn't blown, it probably wouldn't have been as interesting. Now, I did want you to kind of step on a sea urchin, and I was kind of like, after having all that, and then survive it.
I was wanting to see.
Or like it.
I was wanting to see a sea urchin after a while. It took us a long time to actually even
After
see
your
one.
dream where they carpeted, you
No.
didn't even see one?
We did see a few.
Okay. And the other thing that I think is so fascinating about vacations and getting out of, even though they cause anxiety, I love traveling, but it's that inertia to get out of, I'm in this comfortable place and I have to go to this other place. Our brains survive on routine, but we thrive in novelty. So just know all of our brains need those kinds of experiences. Not that we need to have things go wrong, but we just need things that we don't, you know, driving in a way that you're not used to. Your brain's like, lots of neural pathways are being created during that. Whether you do it again or not, there could be some muscle memory, but it's really good for our brains to do that, so. All right, I'm going to read a little story here. We've only got 2 storytellers left, so we're closing in. All right, this is anonymous. Ooh, tell us about when you met someone famous. I never met her, but I was behind Scarlett Johansson for the outhouse. I think it's adjacent. I think it counts. All right, so let's give a warm welcome to our 8th storyteller, Josie Carruthers.
Has it ever crossed your mind that you would have the experience and wonder what you would do if you were among the first people, or maybe the first, on the planet Earth to encounter aliens? It happened to me twice. The first time, I was a freshman at Marlborough College, long, long ago. And yeah, I was blasted. It's true. I was very high on some excellent cannabis. We went out, but no, that doesn't rob the experience of its authenticity. So a friend of mine came from off campus with this fantastic dope, and we toked it up. And then we went outside. It was the dead of winter. And of course, in those days, we had a lot of snow. And so there was about this much snow on the ground with a thick sheet of ice on top of it, which was great. So, you know, it's very late at night. There's a full moon. Sky is clear. And we walked down the dirt road. It's very rural down in Marlborough, Vermont. And then we went up into a field, and we're on the surface. It's wonderful. That's always a magic time. And we'd go to a field behind that field. And then we go, and it's the moonlight, and we go to a field behind that field, and then behind that field. Oh my God. No. Can't be. There in the middle of the field. There it was. I mean, it had a dome. It had a metal presence around it, you know, very symmetrical, and it was gleaming, it was alive, it was vibrant. And I had this little lantern I didn't really need, but we had it in case it got dark. And my friend Pam sort of went back of me. And I stood there, and the feeling of awe is enormous. And so I hold up the lantern, you know, what am I gonna do? This is real, this is really happening. I hold up the lantern and I call out, "We're friendly!" We're friendly. And I'm advancing because I cannot resist, I've got to know. It was like a 1937 DeSoto embedded in the snow, you know. But it was a moment, and it was one of those, you know, searing into your memory. Oh my God, it was incredible. So then I kind of learned a little something about myself. Then, yeah, wacko, some people say. So a few years ago, here in East Randolph, we usually have an intergenerational multi-day Memorial Day weekend party, and this was the Sunday night. And it was another clear night, and there was a whole group of us, like, 12, 15 people, different ages, different orientations. And we had just enjoyed a spectacular bonfire, and the darkness had returned. And somebody said, "What's that?" and pointed up into the sky. And other voices said, "Oh my God, what's that?" And up in the sky, we saw something coming from right to left across the southern sky. we're much faster, right, much faster than anything you could ever imagine, that any of us had ever seen. And then another one came, and you could tell, I cannot explain why, that it was impossibly high. Very, very, very far away. So, further away than anything that we've ever seen. But there was we could tell this, everybody could. And so another object came and lined up behind it, and another one. And then the whole group kind of disappeared over to the left. And then another one came. And people are saying, what is it? What is it? What's going on? And people are like visceral sounds. I know at one point I heard my own voice saying, oh my God, oh my God. And this sound like a whale coming out of my mouth. It was of awe. And other people were doing the same thing. And we're all in shock. We just never, it was an incredible thing. And then somebody said, well, I'm glad we're here and not somewhere else where this is happening, when this is happening, because this is it. We're all on board with each other. There was no dissenting. Nobody was saying, it's a weather satellite, or, blah, blah, blah. There wasn't one dissenter. And somebody said, yeah, well, I'm glad we're together. And someone said, yeah, this is probably a pretty good place to be, let's see, what resources do we have among us? And so we said, well, we've got a doctor, we've got farmers, we've got a therapist, we've got water and land, and this great seriousness was among the group, and we bonded like really instantly, like this was just a matter of minutes. We were together. We were going to face something that humanity had never faced before. And, well, okay, it was us. We're the ones. Okay, so be it. It was an incredible thing. And we also had an advanced mathematician and an astrophysicist. So we all turned to the astrophysicist and said, what is it? And she says, I don't know, I never saw anything like this before. And so then, all of a sudden, the mathematician and the astrophysicist turned to each other and said, at the same time, the internet! And they ran helter-skelter to the house. We're out there waiting. What could they possibly discover? Was there a big announcement? Was there, what's going on? And we're waiting, and we're almost huddled together, We're certainly clustered. And we're gazing in awe at it looked like, you ever see a subway train in the dark, or a train in the dark, and it was a rectangle, a series of little lit up rectangles in a line, in back of each other, and then whoosh, and be gone, and then another one. It was insane to us. This was like, 2023, 22, something like that. The mathematician and the astrophysicist eventually showed up at the house, back from the house, and said, Elon Musk. No one was supposed to see this. It was unannounced. It was just a fluke. They were released in Florida. But it was supposed to be like stealth. But we were somehow in the right trajectory to have seen this thing. We all said, it was both a letdown and an extraordinary relief. But to have that experience twice was profound for me, so thank you.
Who will our first storyteller be?
Yeah, that's right. It's just got to be Toby. Yeah, it is. It's Toby Bashaw. And I get to talk about the Rose Field. Now, who knows Philip Pullman's work? Golden Compass made it into a movie, and he writes about consciousness. This is a consciousness, like it's fiction, and it is supposedly age 12 and up. And so this is volume 3 of the follow-up trilogy to the first trilogy, which was called His Dark Materials. And this has, this is a follow-up to it. And the level of excitement, adventure, creativity, and downright rock-bottom profundity, as well as compassion and heart, posed against the heartlessness and of the despoilers of that which the heart loves, whether it's nature, friendship, fairness, or whatever. He's taking us on a voyage that it's not just me, but I'll say for me, expands my mind, I love the characters dearly. I will know them for the rest of my life. And so all I can say is I deeply recommend this rollicking, extraordinary adventure. It never gets boring. So check it out. This is just volume 3. The other 2 volumes, probably the library has also, since they have this one, or they can get it. It's great. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you, Josie. I definitely think we all went out a little mind expansion there. I do have a question though. The second alien experience, were you high?
A little bit. But there were 15 people or so, and everybody was not exactly, so, and I wasn't really blasted.
Thank you for the disclaimers. I am a lawyer, but I'm not going to arrest you. It's law. What was interesting though is I had some good friends up in Quebec, up in Grandy, and they were high, outside, just sitting outside. All of a sudden they saw exactly what you saw. And they were like, oh my, and they were like having the same exact, reaction because it was completely unscripted. Nobody knew it was happening.
Yeah.
And they later found out it was the Starlink satellites that were being launched. And it was like, and so what happened is they all lined up and then they went, whoo. And it was just, for anyone that was out there and just randomly smoking a joint and saw it, or even just sober, was like blown away.
That's right.
So it's one of those moments that I think connected people, even though they didn't know it.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing.
And the great thing was, and there's a lot in Philip Pullman about human bonds, and what we bonded. We were experiencing this real possibility that life, as we have always known it, and humanity has always known it, is now absolutely changed in some key way. And we were part of it. What did we do? We bonded.
It's called trauma bonding, Josie. We're doing it now.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like, sometimes when I get on an airplane, I'll look around, kind of like I'm going to be in the show Lost, just wondering, like, what characters are going to really rise up? Like, who's going to be the ones to really help us? Was there a lawyer in the group? I feel like you needed a lawyer, at least a Virgo. At least a Virgo. Just to organize things, just to get everyone. All right, I'm going to read one final audience story. This person put a lot of effort into it. I did say write in the space provided, but they used a paperclip. So Wayne, our camera guy, he shared a story about a near-death experience. I think it's worth the paperclip. At age 67, I started a job as a caretaker on an island in Lake Champlain. I only rarely understood the complete job expectation, but above all, taking care of the workbook was of the utmost importance. During a particularly violent storm, I was awakened at 2 a.m. and worried that is it the workbook? Am I reading that right?
Yeah.
The workbook, my only connection with the mainland, was in danger of being torn away from the dock. I suited up and went to the dock to check it out. My camera was warranted. The boat was taking a serious beating. I managed to get aboard the boat carrying additional lenses to
Lines.
What?
Lines.
Lines to further secure the boat. Thank you. And I'm not good with reading.
I'm not good with writing.
Getting on the boat and back over the dock required careful timing. We'll just do this together. And as I timed my leap, the boat, a very
Heavy.
I thought it said horny, but I'm going with it. It was a very heavy workboat, was thrown up by a wave and knocked me off the dock into the water where my body was smashed between the boat and the dock. I remember losing consciousness and slipping beneath the water and swallowing a lot of water. Not sure how long I was down, but at some point I felt myself sort of waking up and realizing I was not in a
Dream.
And since I'm here, I obviously managed to save myself and got out of the water.
The story goes on.
The story goes on. But this is
Can't help you.
This is enough for a near death.
Yeah, there's enough.
Oh, lots of suspense. I love a lot of suspense just reading it. But yeah, wow, I'm glad you survived that. And honestly, Wayne, if you needed 2 pages and a paperclip, now you need to tell this story to a live audience. Yeah, I think you're up.
Well, it went on quite a bit more after that.
Wow, it sounds harrowing.
Yeah.
Scary. Well, I'm glad you're here.
Me too.
I'm glad you survived. All right, so our 8th storyteller of the night, is it 8? Yeah. I don't know, somehow. Yeah, it's 8, but I had it as 9, but that might come wrong. Is Toby Bashaw. Let's give him a warm welcome.
I think my 77-year-old bad hip needs a chair, so I'm gonna use it. I don't remember the year exactly, 12 or 13 years ago probably, but I remember the day. I'll never forget the day for a number of reasons. It was the 18th of March, which was the day on which my father had died about 6 or 7 years earlier. And it was also the day before my birthday. But my wife and I and an apprentice who was helping us had been skidding some firewood out with our team of horses, and it was a gray, sort of nasty March day. Kind of like today, except a lot colder and still probably 5 or 6 inches of snow on the ground. Kind of foggy, just, nasty day to be out. So we finished up in the afternoon, the apprentice went home, we put the horses away, and my wife said, "Why don't you deliver the milk?" We were sharing some of our Jersey milk with a neighbor. She said, "Why don't you deliver the Jersey milk and I'll start on chores?" And I said, "Sure." So I went down, our driveway was about probably 1,500, 2,000 feet long. Went down to Route 14 and took the milk to the neighbor, probably chatted a minute or two with him. Came back and our mailbox was there on South Randolph Road at the end of the driveway. So I pulled in the driveway and got the mail. And there's a lot of junk mail. And normally I don't read junk mail, and I think it's a bad idea to read junk mail. But for whatever reason that day, I sat there in the car at the end of the driveway looking at the junk mail. Then I headed up to the house and our cabin, and as I rounded this one sharp right-hand turn at the high point of the driveway before the last, 300 feet or so to the cabin and the cow shed that we had and where the cow was. I could see a bright light near the cowshed through the fog. And I thought it was headlights, somebody visiting us. And as I approached it, I realized it was flames. And the cowshed was on fire. Now bear in mind, this is an off-grid location, no electricity, and it's wetter than hell. And I just couldn't imagine, you know, it was one of those, I was more stunned by that experience than I've ever been by anything else in my life, because I thought this just can't happen here. It wasn't lightning, you know. So anyway, in the heat of the moment, I didn't stop to think. I went right up there, and there was a yard valve. Everybody know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Frost-free yard valve about 40 feet from the shed, 30 or 40 feet from the shed. Jumped out of the car, yelled to my wife to bring the fire extinguisher. She was in the cabin just up beyond the shed. It was a 10 by 20 shed, and one half 10 by 10 that held, well, the horse harness was hanging in there, some straw, some hay, and the right half was a 10 by 10 section for the cow. We milked her in there, and she could, you know, bed down in there, and so on and so forth. Went to the yard valve. The hose had some ice in it, so hose is no good, but there were 5-gallon buckets. So I started throwing buckets of water. My wife brought the fire extinguisher down, and I don't know if you've ever used a dry chemical fire extinguisher, but they're great for, I don't know, a nanosecond it seems like, and then they're empty. And we were pouring water on. I had taken the harness and the straw out of the one side and just thrown it in the snow away from the shed. And we started dumping buckets of water on the fire. And I just, you know, as I could, we didn't talk much. And as we were doing this, I just, you know, occasionally would think, this just can't be, this can't be happening. And we thought we were gonna lose the shed. But at one point, my wife ran around to the backside. The backside was only 5 feet high. There was probably a gap about 4 or 5 inches between the wall and the roof. You know, just a shed for the cow. And the flames were running up the inside of the back wall and up and over, and they hugged the roof all the way up. Amazing sight to see. And finally, she went around back and dumped a bucket of water kind of inside, up through that crack and inside. And then we got the upper hand, and little by little, by continuing to dump buckets of water on it, we finally got it put out. And at one point, when we did have the better hand and we knew we were going to save it, and the cow was not in the shed, she was in a, I don't know, probably 50, 60 foot circle of fence that connected to 2 corners of the adjacent corners of the shed. Said, I know how this happened. She said, I brought ashes out earlier today, and on the outside of the fence there was a pile of manure and straw, probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet high. She had put the ashes on that pile of straw, and it was so wet, I mean, you can't imagine that a fire would have started. But in fact, it had dried out the straw on the pile, the coals that were hidden in the ashes, had dried out the straw. Followed the straw down the pile and across the trail of straw inside the pen, because when we cleaned it out, we would walk over and just toss the manure over, which I picked up later with the bucket loader. But then once it got to the shed, then it was dry straw. And it was, boy, that was a feast for the fire. And that's how the fire got going. And so, but we did finally get, you know, we did get it out. And this road, I mean, there was no point in trying to call the fire department because they'd never get up there. And all the while, the cow was on the backside of the, you know, the fenced-in enclosure. Yeah. And I'm sure she was thinking, I will never rent one of these tenements again. You know? So we, anyway, once the fire was out, now the cow's bed, the 10 by 10 cow's bed, is just soaked, you know, 6 or 7 inches of straw that we've thrown water on. And we need a place for her. So we began to shovel out the wet straw, throw it on the pile, and put dry straw down for her. I think we sat down to supper about 11:30 or 11:45 that night. And as we were in bed after that, I lay there just kind of thinking about this whole event and realizing that if I hadn't stopped to read that junk mail, we'd have lost that shed, because the fire would have been small enough and just trickling that I would have driven right on by it to the cabin. And my wife couldn't see it from the cabin. But, so the junk mail kind of, that one aberration in my relationship with junk mail actually saved that building. And hey, when I woke up, it was my birthday. The book I chose when Samara asked for your favorite book was Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. And I read it years ago. It had the most, I don't know if favorite is the right word, but I guess it is, because it had the most profound and long-lasting visceral effect on me of any book I've ever read. I'm 77. I've put quite a few books past my eyes. D. Brown is the author. Doris was his name, D-O-R-R-I-S, born in Louisiana, and in 1908, just I think the same year as my grandfather, my dad's dad. But in this, he chronicles our elimination of Native Americans and what we did to them. A friend of mine who's half Micmac Indian says it's the most successful campaign that the United States government has ever launched, to just eliminate Native Americans. And he has another book called Hear That Lonesome Whistle Blow, which is about the Intercontinental Railroad. And he tells how when the two, they were working west to east and east to west, and when they met, they just kept right on going past one another because they were getting paid by the mile. And so they just said, hey, we're going to milk this for all it's worth. So, and they sold, I forget if it's in this or in Here That Lonesome Whistle Blow. He tells about meat, and we'd already shoved the Native Americans onto reservations at that point. Meat that was destined for the cavalry outposts, the army outposts, the various forts out in the Midwest. If it spoiled on the way out, they sold it to the Native Americans on the reservation. So, the corruption that's going on in the administration these days doesn't hold a candle to what was happening back then. It's just that now we hear about it seconds later or minutes later, and then it was, only by telegraph or whatever. But very well documented. It's not as though he's, some renegade nutcase. It's all congressional record in this book, and also Hear That Lonesome Whistle Blow. So I highly recommend it too. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I grew up on a reservation. I grew up on the White Earth Indian Reservation with the Ojibwa and the Chippewa. And it's true, like even growing up there, I didn't learn about Native American history until I went to law school. And many people do not understand what happened and why do we have reservations. I didn't even understand. I grew up on one until I went to law school and realized it. It is horrifying. But I think we need to know what we did. And we need to actually acknowledge that it's part of our history, sadly. And I do want to say that, these stories all have threads that run through them. And I think for your story, Toby, the junk mail was your interruption. It was your pen, and it had value.
Yeah,
it had value.
That's true.
Right, because it's all about timing, right? It was second here, seconds there, we pause, things shift. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I do want to say there are, I'm not good with math, but 168 more library storytelling events in your future, in my future, hopefully yours. May 21st, I'm going to be in Killington at the Sherburne Memorial Library. June 25th, New Haven. July, I'll be in Alburgh. So, once again, if you want to know about storytelling events, please sign up. There's handouts there. I'm going to
And the
leave.
sign up is back there also?
Yep, the sign up is right there. You're a storyteller, so you're on the list. So you will hear about all the other events. I do want to say a couple words, just leave you with a couple words, and then we're going to thank everyone that made this possible. The first is by Mary Oliver. Instructions for living a life. Pay attention. Be astonished. Tell about it. At my event, hopefully. And then this is Ralph Waldo Emerson. Though we travel the world over to find the beautiful, we must carry it with us, or we find it not. So thanks everyone for sharing your beautiful with all of us. I want to thank Eva for being our great storyteller. Let's thank Wayne for being our fearless reporter back there. I want to thank Devin for co-hosting this whole event. And I want to thank all of the storytellers for being brave and vulnerable and sharing part of them with us. And have a good night.
Thank you.
Live a storyteller's,
Samara.
live a story-worthy life. That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
The more things that go off kilter, that's what you want to tell them.